Well, in short, what happened today was Keir Starmer's Defence Secretary John Healey resigned. And on the political level, that's a real blow to Starmer as Prime Minister, not just because there have been six ministerial resignations in the past month, but also because Healey himself was seen as a very loyal, hardworking, head-down member of Starmer's government, not somebody previously seen to have leadership ambitions of his own, and a loyal ally to Starmer. So that really suggests that Starmer's credibility, even with his inner circle of ministers, is perhaps draining away. In more defence spending and policy terms, it's it's very significant because the UK has made very ambitious spending commitments on defence, and it's made them some time ago. In February last year, this government said that it would hit 2.5% of GDP spending on defence by 2027, and it would raise that to 3% of GDP sometime in the next parliament. So that's from 2029 to 2030. The argument today seems to have really spilled over the vagueness of that 3% promise. So Healey interpreted that to mean we'll hit 3% of GDP by 2030, as soon as possible within that target. And Britain's Treasury pushed back on that and was seeking a much slower journey to that. Well, I agree. There's a kind of curious mismatch between the statements the government makes about the level of security risk the UK is facing and what it's prepared to do in terms of the public finances. When Starmer announced the new firm commitment to hit 2.5% of GDP and rise to 3% GDP by the next parliament, that was just after the Munich Security Conference, where JD Vance had made really statements that were quite shocking to European allies in the room about the America no longer being prepared to underwrite European security in the same way. And obviously, this all comes in the shadow of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and continuing campaign to kind of undermine security in Europe. So at that moment might have been the time to put to the public, we may need to consider tax rises, or we may need to make some really tough choices around other areas of public spending. But that didn't really happen. And arguably some of the political momentum around the starkness of that warning and of those targets drained away. I think the issue under the surface that it's important to keep in mind is that quandary of how you fund significant increased defence requirements when you don't have the option of, or when you have taken the option of raising taxes off the table, when you already have high public debt, when you have a lot of other calls on the public purse. That's fairly too much because we are at a moment of high uncertainty for this government. It's not just this argument about defence spending and Healey's resignation. We also are just about to go through, it looks like, a Labour leadership challenge. And we may therefore see a contender replace Starmer as Prime Minister. But most of the candidates for that job, I think it's fair to say, we haven't heard a lot about their approach to defence and foreign affairs specifically. Domestic issues have consumed the discussion about new Labour Prime Minister, mostly, other than some discussions about the UK's relationship with the EU and Brexit. But any new Prime Minister will find these questions come at them fast. Starmer's time as Prime Minister has been consumed by foreign affairs and international issues because there are so many difficult questions facing the UK, not just Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the threat to European security, but the changing role of the US, the UK's approach to China, the conflict in the Middle East. So it's a kind of question that needs answering, I think, is what would any of these prospective candidates for new Labour Prime Minister do about these tough questions?